Hello and welcome to the first of what is going to be a little series of mine. So, as promised, I'm going to regale you with the tale of my D&D campaign. Hopefully you enjoyed the accompaniment of a bit of jazz in the background. It may stop playing every now and then as it changes track, but don't worry about it. So, today I'm going to tell you about session 1. Now, I must admit I was a little nervous for this one, because, truth be told, it's been a while, and I thought to myself, oh god, it's going to be a bit of a rough one, and I might not, be able to do a good job, and all this stuff, but nah, I did it. And I'm pretty happy to say I did it well, I think. But of course, excuse me, of course, I'm going to tell you about it now, the chicanery of the first session. It all started off quite well, for the players, that is. Let me introduce you to my two players, in fact, just so you're aware of who they are. My two players are Asaran and Ruck. The third will not be introduced this session. You will hear about him next session. But to give you a quick rundown, Ruck is a paladin. Now, in the land of Beijing, which is where the party hail from, is quite an eastern land. Think a mix of sort of bit of China, bit of Japan, bit of Mongolia to a point, bit of Vietnam, bit of just various cultures around that part of the world mixed in, right? Basically, the Asian continent kind of merged into a country. And as such, they had to go travelling. They must travel quite the distance. But not yet, because this is the start of their venture, the inciting incident. And it all started on a pleasant morning. The party was summoned by their lord. He's known as Lord Fulong, excuse me. The Lord is a mighty golden dragon. An adult golden dragon. Not quite at the full height of its majesty, but nothing to slouch at either. Of course, in the land of Asia, it is ruled by dragons such as Lord Fulong. And the Lord requested his warriors to attend him. You may wonder why. He had a guest. A visitor. From all the way in the land known as Hitara. Or at least the city, should I say. Now, my players know this because my last campaign took place there. You, however, well, you're going to get introduced to it through this, so there's a lot of stuff you won't know about the place, but they will, because of hindsight, of being there before, technically. Their player characters, though, are completely aliens of land. This should be rather interesting when they get there. But that won't be for a while. You might wonder why they're going there, and, well, allow me to regale you. The stranger had a request of the Lord. He was looking for an artifact, the likes of which had been seen for a very, very long time. This particular treasure, this artifact, if you will, was known as the Screaming Head. The Screaming Head is a rather miraculous, powerful item. It is, from the legends, a dragon's skull, specifically after it had been reincarnated. You might ask me what about that. To give you the very brief little overview of why that's a thing. In my setting, when a dragon dies, they revert to an egg, like a phoenix. But, unlike a phoenix, they essentially they have to regrow from the start, and it takes a very long time for their memories to return. So for quite a lot of a dragon's life, they may not know who they were before until they hit this point. And it's different for every dragon, but this point where they remember, they awaken. They remember who they were. Now, why is this important? Well, they're also very vulnerable in this state. But normally, you cannot truly kill a dragon. Someone did. Mounted its head on top of a mace and took it to a very dark, dark site. Where an eldritch god, simply known as the Beast, blessed it, so to speak. Though, when I say anything's blessed by the Beast from here on, understand that the Beast doesn't bless things. Someone steals power from it, or takes so little power that it doesn't notice, but for us it's a lot. The Screaming Head is an artifact of great power. Said to be in the Grave of Dragons, where it was kept for safekeeping as well. Let me attest to you that, well, dragons don't tell people where they die. You might ask, grave? Yes, there are ways a dragon can truly die. It can happen, and it can definitely cause a stir. As such, they have a place to bury the dead, but also store things that are best left forgotten. Anyway, the stranger wanted this for keeping it safe, if you can believe such a thing. Obviously, it wasn't as innocent as it sounded. Of course, the Lord refused. Outright. Why wouldn't he? This artifact is no good. There is never a good reason to go looking for this thing, because it can literally kill dragons. Even if it's just temporarily. You know, why would he give such a thing to a stranger, let alone someone from a faraway land? With warriors of his own mind, quite a few, to say the least. Now, after this, the party was sent to investigate a disturbance the Lord had received. A village allegedly was being attacked by hobgoblin raiders. Upon reaching this after a day's ride, the party encountered a sight of horror. Bodies just flayed. A just absolute set of carnage. And hobgoblins ransacking the place. At this point, they took to action. Now, to go with a little bit of detail with Asaran now. Asaran is a monk. But he doesn't do a traditional monk thing. No. No, he is a gun monk. And by that I mean he is a Kensai monk who utilises firearms and has the gunner feat. Yes, all the players get a free feat. Gunner was one of the ones he took, as well as sharpshooter. So Asaran walks in a building and simply, well, you know the copy pasta blow a golf ball sized hole through the first man? That was Asaran. He walked in and just shish kebabbed him out with bullets. No mercy. Absolutely beautiful. Rak has a harder time at first getting into combat. At this point he is an Oath of Crown Paladin, though for the rest of the campaign he will be an Oath of Vengeance Paladin. So, for the first session, he was operating with Oath of Crown abilities. So, but for the rest, Vengeance. Due to what happens this session. So, Rak has a harder time at first getting into combat. And some of the opponents here are not exactly, how shall we say, weak. The hobgoblins are fairly well armed compared to their normal kindred. Party's history, well, the history of the player characters would be that they're used to dealing with hobgoblin raiders. Think Mongolian Khans and that kind of thing, like the Khan himself over in Mongolia. Genghis Khan, that kind of thing. Well, These were not those goblins. No, these hobgoblins were well armed, well armored, and quite well equipped. Not mounted either, which is unusual. Most hobgoblins spend a lot of their lives mounted as well, due to the vastness of the terrain. And the speeds of which they need to go hit and run style. Because Beijing has a very big army, and protracted engagement is just not an option for them. But these hobgoblins acted like a military unit, commanded by a knight. Or a crusader, you might say. These knights were clad in full plate, adorned in orange robes, and carrying a greatsword. That's sort of a black sort of cross at their back. Honestly, a bit like a Space Marine or a Dark Angel, honestly. To be totally fair to you, they make a very good colour scheme, actually, now that I think about it, for a Space Marine chapter. I might have to look into that. But these guys, they went back hard against the party. Rack got quite battering. Now, the knights could hit pretty hard. Great swords and a once per short rest ability to switch their hit to a crit. Quite a deadly blow, I think you'll agree. And essentially equal health to the party. You might ask me, why would I do this? Well, you'll soon learn my combats are perhaps more a game of sadism at some point. But, yeah, the party were more than equipped to deal with them. It's just, I didn't want to give it an easy. And they did not get it easy at all. Over the course of the battle, the party went back and forth, taking and receiving damage. Rack got quite beaten up. Asuran, in this engagement, simply liquefied everything he touched. Like, my hat's off to my player, Onyx, who's also a streamer. You may know him from Valorant. JD Moss's Rack. And Asuran just liquefied a lot of them. He would get in a horde, didn't matter, he can still shoot you. He had a brace of flintlocks, basically. And he went to town with them. Rack, to be his credit, once he got someone on their own and got his smites off, dismantled them. After the party had dealt with these creatures, they then unmasked from the knights to discover that these warriors, some of them aren't living anymore. Some of them are undead, or reborn in this case. Essentially an undead who, by their own means, resurrected, rather than a necromancer. Which meant they were free will. They had full free will, and knew exactly what they were doing. They were going to capture this one before the carnage completed what the hobgoblins were trying to do. See, all the bodies were lined with ritualistic markings upon their flayed selves, the skin aligned in a very particular way. To tear the veil open. Why would they need to do this? Simple. To let demons and devils into the world. And as such, a demon manifested itself. A mighty crow-like demon. This creature was known to the party as a very manipulative creature from Beijing legend. As such, they knew fine well anything this thing would say would likely a lie. To their surprise, they were thanked by it. The demon stated how it was pleased with the party for helping tear the veil open, and that more of its kindred would come forth, and it was sad that it had to share the joys of being here, and so it promised them a quick death. The party responded by giving it a quick death. They surrounded it. Despite its physical resistance, Asuran just brute forced it. He is 5th level monk, 3rd level fighter, but as soon as he gets magical attacks with his weapons, Christ, it's going to be terrifying. Needless to say, it was a rough fight. at times. It was a very, very rough fight. But after all of it, the party came through. Just about barely. But not without some scratches. Not without quite a few scratches, indeed. They were battered, they were broken, but they were ready. They went to ride back immediately, as these knights were the same ones flanking the stranger. So simply put, they had to go. They had to go forward. Riding as fast as they could, the horses simply had to stop. They pushed them as far as they could push, but simply put, those horses are good, but a full day non-stop riding and then more? No, not that good. So they had to stop after about a half day extra of riding. The horses were well bred, but not that well. As such, they made camp. Excuse me. After a while, as Rak rested, the Reborn spoke. He told Asaran a few things. The knight revealed his name was Harkon, and then that's when they found out he was a Reborn. In his first life, he was from a land called Tarn, a cold land to the far west, just near the Sea of Teeth. The land's cursed with the curse of undeath, hence likely how he revived. But he then also began to reveal that the Cainites, who were the group he was part of, were what took him in, allowed him to have a purpose. Asaran heard him out, spoke with him a bit, promised he'd remember him. Before Harkon could reveal much more, though, another crow-like entity had taken refuge inside of him, or at least some of the crows that made up his being. They tore the way out of his mouth, killing him, for good this time, emptying out like a rag. As such, he was no more. But he did reveal that tomorrow things were going to happen. The party rested and awoke sounds of battle. Riding as hard as they could, they tore their way through the countryside to the city, only to discover it was sieged. Looking for their lord, they saw him in the sky. An ill omen indeed. For if a lord of Beijing flies, things have gone very, very wrong. Now, when they got to the battlefield that was subsequently happening, their lord was engaged with the stranger, wielding a strange mace, or a hammer. Blackened and evil, this thing was doing real work to the lord, but not just that. Great bolts were driven through their lord's wings, clipping them, preventing his flight, and forcing him to engage with the stranger and 4 great demonic entities, these insectoid-like creatures with great spears, glowing blue and eldritch. The party were faced with a very horrific dilemma. Their lord had demanded the capture and securing of the Crypt of Heroes, or a defilement had happened there. Such a defilement that, simply put, it could not be left unchecked. The party would then be forced to deal with that and not help their lord, despite their lord's losing battle. The stranger somehow doing battle with a dragon, of all things. And not a weak one either, mind. Wulong is a fairly competent and powerful lord, so to say the fact he was winning is shocking. And the lord's lack of personal guard even more so. They are diligent, and many of them are Drake Wardens, so they could definitely keep up with him. Now, the party would do battle with a company of hobgoblins led by more knights, flanked by another mighty demon, another one of the insectoid ones. These ones in particular were known as headhunters of hell. This was a devil in this case, and a very adept one at murder. The party, along with a temporary addition, Captain Yang, would do battle. The rest of the Ainsu, the warriors that they were a part of, would distract the Hobgoblin horde, as the party would engage the knights, the devil, excuse me. Yang did not make it. He slew a Hobgoblin, but the demon slew him. Of course, the party, the best they could, Asuran brute forcing the thing's physical resistance. He had no silver bullets either, so couldn't help him there. And Rak, of course, against the demonic entity, or devilish entity in this case, was even more powerful against it, his smites hitting home against its evil, fiendish hide. However, that was not the end of the battle. Not even close. Things were going rather bad in the main part of the engagement. And a demon had pulled off from the fight with the Lord to assist the Hobgoblins, and it was ravaging the Ainsu warriors. As far as what Ainsu is, by the way, think a samurai, and you've got a good idea. They will operate a very similar kind of thing. If you're excited to get some 47 Ronin vibes from this, by the way, good. I'm doing my job. If you haven't yet, you will probably shortly. So, party would then enter the Crypt of Heroes, only to discover an abomination, a violation of their kin. Their own Ainsu brothers, who had died a hero, had been resurrected as contorted horrors. Powerful undead that surpassed them in power easily, wielding darkened blades corrupted by dark magic, and throwing axes tainted by, well, not quite as tainted, but still not exactly something hitting you. The blades that they wielded as well, when cutting you, would prevent healing for a time, and so only one of the party can heal. That wasn't going to go well. They burned a lot of resources fighting the devil. Once the party attempted to engage these things, it went rather badly. I must admit, from a DM perspective, I had to adjust them a little bit because I realised they're a bit overtuned. So, I did a bit of last minute adjustments. I did a few that session. The first session is always a gauging session. How strong are the party? How overdone am I with stuff? Because my players, they kind of used to my kind of sessions. So, needless to say, they know what I'm about. And I like me some brutal combat that makes you think. When I make them think, make them earn their victory, and watch how happy they are afterwards, that's when I know I've done a good job. But I did a bit too much for this one. But I refused to let anyone die on session 1. Technically, Asuran would have fallen, but I refused to let anyone die session 1. Plus, I honestly quite like his character. I like both their characters, honestly. Rak is the straight man of the group, dedicated to his lord. Asuran is not as much of a straight man, but his entire thing is he is locked away, partly by the player's choice, because the player doesn't want to be a leader this time. He's always quite the group leader. But also, he's essentially bound to whoever has this key. They tell him what to do, and he will follow their orders. Because Asuran was a very bad man once, and through dedication to a very odd and particular monastic tradition, he bound himself by rules to stop himself being a monster again. The players awoke after their fight, surrounded by the dead. Walking outside, their lord, broken, bloody, with the weapons of his bodyguards slammed into him, many of them turning traitor, the others likely slain. He commanded them to retrieve his egg, his core, what had been stolen from him. The party knew, as he told them, they would be considered traitors most likely now for failing him, but he did not consider them such. He bade them to go retrieve his core with all post-haste. The party knew they were no longer Ainsu. At best, in the Beiju caste system, they'd be considered Ho, the lowest caste, below even the citizens. Their entire province would likely be put to the sword, as the Celestial Council, the rulers of Beijing, would not take kindly to the death of a dragon. And likely, especially with internal espionage going on, they'd likely see it as a necessity to simply cleanse the province, especially with all the undead running around now, as many more were awakened. So, the party knew, after a talk with another captain over in a fort to the north, that the city of Tual was their best option. A massive port city, said to be where many of the people in this continent came from, as this continent wasn't always inhabited by humans and human-adjacent creatures. It was a land of hobgoblins and dragons for the longest time, along with various goblin tribes and kobolds. Many kobolds. So they set off to the south after their talk. They would go south to collect their third member, and they would also go to a port in Beijing. This port would essentially take them out of the country as fast as possible. The reason? Quite simple. They would be hunted as long as they were in Beijing's borders. But if they could get out quickly, they might be okay. So they ran. They ran because they had to. The stranger, long gone. The other warriors would proceed west and risk the Khanate lands. Hobla Khan is not a very welcoming host. Yes, that is the leader of the Hobgoblin Khanate. Don't at me. And as far as the Lord's money and wealth, secretly, that was taken and transported as well. That was own routes to the far north, frigid lands that you would tread. The party would be heading to the Barrens, a land wrought with danger, a cold, frigid land, where one of the cities has an interesting little quirk. See, the beast I talk of manifested once. It was killed somehow, though you can never truly kill a god. Its form stalks the land in more spectral ways now, but back then it had a body. Its body still remains. And next session, they might just see it. But that is where we'll end our story of the Lost Warriors, out to prove their innocence, despite everything the world's throwing at them right now. That is the end of our tale. I hope you enjoyed it. And next week, at least as of recording, will be when I do the next session. So hopefully I'll be able to say about the third little addition to the party. A little kobold, who is a parasite warlock, because we're using a little well-known third-party book. So hopefully you'll like him. Now, that's the end of our tale. So, I have been Baron Zarkrabel, and this has been Session 1 of The Lost Warriors. Till then, for now.